Hey everyone, welcome to Singularity Computers Client Build 5 Part 2. The name that the client and I have decided on for this build is Nighthawk. In Part 1 I gave you an overview of all of the hardware that I'm going to be using in the system, and I then gave you a closer look at the main components. In Part 2 I'm going to start the construction of the build, and the construction of this system is going to start with putting the water blocks on the graphics cards, the motherboard. I need to assemble the pumps with the Bits Power mod kits. I need to put the fans and grills on the radiators. I also need to mod the case, mount the radiators into the case. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I need to do first before I can start the actual construction of the build. So I'm going to start by covering those things. As I go, I'll be able to give you a closer look and some details on some of the hardware that I haven't already given you a look at. Okay, now it's time for a look at the pumps and the Bits Power mod kits. I've actually done a separate product overview and installation guide on these components. Click on the link on the screen to check that out. In that video you can see what each of the components looks like on its own, what the pumps look like by default, get all the details on these components, and also see how it all goes together. But what you're looking at here is the finished product, the pumps assembled with the Bits Power mod kits. So at the front is the Bits Power dual pump top, and if I spin it around you can see at the back is the pumps, but you actually can't see the pumps at all because they're completely covered up by the Bits Power mod kits. Now the pumps on their own look really ugly. The default pumps look terrible, so the Bits Power mod kits greatly improve the aesthetics of the pumps. They also give you a lot more mounting options because you've got all these mounting holes all over the pump top. They give you the option to install your own fittings because the stock pumps have no threads. You actually have more inlets and outlets. You've got the two on the top, you've got the two in the front. It improves the performance because it increases the flow. It's a more compact unit, because you've got both the pumps on the same pump top. And it's a serial configuration, extreme performance configuration with redundancy, because if one of these pumps dies, you've still got the other pump pushing coolant through the unit and around the loop. So just a look from the back, you can actually just see the back of the pump through the back of the mod kits here, but that's all you can see of the pump, and then out of the back comes all of the wiring. So they're powered by a 4-pin Molex, and these are the tachometer versions of the pump. So you also get this 3-pin connector, and if you plug this into your motherboard you can read off the RPM of the pump. Now I'll just give you some specifications on these pumps. So this is the Swiftech MCP655B, and they put out 1200 litres per hour, 50 psi, and they can handle 3.1 meters of head. And if you put two of these in a single loop, it can handle any water cooling system imaginable. So there it is. You can actually see the coolant through the front here, and you can mount LEDs in the bottom there, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be mounting LEDs yet because I haven't confirmed how I'm going to be mounting this assembly yet. I do have a number of ideas in mind, but that is something that you'll be seeing later on in the build log. Okay, I've installed the fans, dust filters and grills onto the 560mm radiator, and it's now ready for installation into the system. So I'm just going to give you a quick look around. I'm really happy with the way it looks. Everything matches up black, including the bolts that I've used. You can see that I've used these Allen key button head bolts. The ones on this side are 30mm M4s. The ones that I've used on the other side to mount the grills are 5mm M4s. One of the good things about these fans is the short cables so that I can attach any length extension cable I want to. And you can see that there's gaps between the fans, and this is because the spacing between the mounting holes on this radiator is 20mm instead of the usual 15mm. So yeah, it means there's a 5mm gap between each of the fans. You can just see the fan blades through the dust filters, which looks great. And you can see how fine the mesh is on these dust filters. They do a great job. Okay, now looking at the ModSmart Black 140mm fan grills that I've installed to protect the radiator. You can see the bolts that I've used, and I've also used black washers so that everything matches up nicely. So these grills are necessary because half of this radiator is going to be up against the power supply and the power supply cables, and the other half is going to be up against the other 240mm radiator that I'm going to be installing into the bottom compartment of the case. Okay guys, I've installed both of the 6990s onto my test bed, and I've done this so that I can test them to make sure that they're in perfect working order before I install the water blocks onto them. And this is something that I recommend that everybody does before you install a water block onto anything, because for one, you might be voiding the warranty by removing the stock cooler. And just imagine you've bought a new graphics card and spent like 600 bucks, and just imagine it's DOA and you go install a water block onto it, and then you go try and claim it on warranty and warranty is void. So horrible situation to get into, and it can be avoided by just doing a quick test before you install the water blocks. The other thing is, even if you're not voiding the warranty, it's still extremely annoying to have to, remove the stock cooler, install the water blocks, and then find out that it's, a dead component, have to pull the water block back off, put the stock cooler back on, send it back on warranty. So either way, whether you're avoiding the warranty or not, it's still very annoying. And in this case, these graphics cards are second-hand. They're coming from the client's previous build. They've been sent from interstate. They could have been damaged, during shipping. I have absolutely no idea. So I am just about to start stability testing to make sure that everything is okay. Sometimes I won't test the component before installing a water block. For example, I'm not going to test the Rampage 4 Extreme. I'm just going to go ahead and install the water block straight away, and this is because Asus motherboards have a perfect track record for me. I've never seen one DOA or faulty, never had any problems with them in all my years of using them. So in that case, I trust them. I've never been caught out. I'll save some time and install the water block straight away. Okay, now this is something that I am definitely going to remedy by water cooling the graphics cards. But I thought I'd just give you a listen to how loud these things are before I go ahead and put the water blocks on them. That is just incredible. Just quickly, the temperatures of the graphics cards. It's currently 35 degrees in this room, and that is degrees Celsius. And I've only got the temperature of the two GPUs on the first card. So GPU 1 is 82 degrees Celsius, GPU 2 is 87 degrees Celsius. So I'll remember to compare these temperatures to the water cooling temperature results towards the end of the build log. So that is when you'll really be able to see the effects that the water cooling system has had on these graphics cards. Okay, it's now time for me to give you a look at all of the water blocks before I start installing them. All of the water blocks are from EK, and they're all the nickel plexi versions. So first up, the 6990 water blocks. So I'm just going to go around and give you a good close-up look at them. You can see these water blocks are absolutely massive, just like the 6990. It's always a bit of an extra job to install a water block on a dual GPU graphics card, because you know it's so much bigger. There's more cleaning to do when you remove the stock cooler. There's more thermal interface material to place on the graphics card before you install the water block. It's harder to line everything up, you know, before you start doing up all the bolts. Everything is just a little bit more difficult. Just a quick look underneath the 6990 water block. You can see how high quality they are. Everything about them, the materials, the machining, you can see how shiny they are. They're just perfect. Very impressive. Okay, I have the rest of the water blocks lined up ready for a look here now, as well as the EKFC bridge. And I'm going to start with the memory water blocks. So these are the EK RAM Dominator ×4 blocks. They're designed for 4 DIMMs, and I have 2 of them here. So these will be going on either side of the CPU on the 2 memory banks and cooling the Corsair Dominator GT 16GB kit of memory. Moving on to the EK Supreme HF. I'm always in awe when I look at EK water blocks. Definitely nice to look at. Absolutely a thing of beauty, there's no doubt about that. I would give you a look at the base of this water block, but I want to keep the cover on until right before I install it so that I keep the bottom of the water block in perfect condition. But it's just as shiny as the base of the rest of the water blocks that I'm giving you a look at. Now moving on to the EKFB Kit RE4 water block. So it's the water block for the Rampage 4 Extreme. Now I have said this before in my videos, but I really like this new design. These cuts in the surface of their water blocks, I think it looks great. I mean, I did also like the original, you know, subtlety that they had, but it's good to see that they have some kind of, yeah, design in the surface of their blocks now. So as always, everything is just as perfect as it can be. And you can see the way these pick up the light as well. The light shines through them and kind of illuminates them. So they go very well with LEDs installed. Just to look underneath, everything is perfect and shiny. Basically, you know, at the contact points, which is that square just there, kind of, yeah, the shinier it is, the better contact it's going to make with the surface of, you know, whatever you're installing it onto. And that's why people go to the trouble of lapping the surfaces of their CPUs, basically sanding them down to get them as smooth as possible, you know, so that they have as little imperfections as possible to get that perfect contact. I'll just lift this one up to give you a good look. So this is for the MOSFETs, whereas the other part of it is for the X79 chipset. There is going to be a lot of water blocks in this system. You can see the cuts again there. And the EK logo, just a quick look underneath. Moving on to the EKFC bridge dual serial 3 slot. So I'm not going to go into how this works now because you'll be able to see how it works once it's installed. EK logo on the front there, inlet in the top, or outlet I guess. Another inlet or outlet there, 2 more underneath. And you can see underneath here you've got an inlet and outlet at the top there and at the bottom as well. There's a lot of different versions of these. Now these are the components that actually connect the bridge itself to the graphics card water blocks. So it says it's for the 5000 series AMD graphics cards, but it's also compatible with the 7000 series, and they'll probably continue compatibility with future water blocks as well. And that's basically how it will go together. So that's it. That's the EKFC bridge and all of the water blocks that are going into this system. And I'm going to be doing a separate installation guide video for the motherboard water block as well as the EKFC bridge. And I already have a graphics card water block installation guide, which I'll put a link on the screen for. So I'm not going to be showing you those installations in the build log, because you can easily just go and check them out in the other videos. But I will be giving you a good look at the components once the water blocks are installed. Okay, I've just finished installing all of the water blocks onto the motherboard. So the CPU water block, the motherboard water blocks, and the memory water blocks. And as you can see, it looks absolutely incredible. I admit it does look crowded, but I'm really happy with it. I like the way it looks. It's going to be fun to tube up, that's for sure, because having all of those inlets and outlets so close together makes it difficult. And you think it looks crowded now, wait until I get all of the fittings and the tubing on. It's going to look a whole lot more crowded than it does now, that's for sure. You're not going to be able to see any PCB at all. The motherboard's going to be pretty much invisible. But yeah, I'm really happy with the way it looks. The EK water blocks are just awesome. You know, I can just picture it with all lit up by LEDs. Yeah, it's going to be an amazing build when it's finished. So there's the stock cooling off the motherboard. Anyway, I'm just going to continue giving you a look around. Just to look down from the top. This is the best look that you're going to get of, you know, all of the water blocks on the motherboard, because once it's in the build, yeah, it's going to be difficult to see. So I'm going to make sure that you get to see every angle of it now. Okay, now from this side. So it probably took an hour to get all of the water blocks installed, but it would have taken half the time if I didn't film a separate installation guide on how to install a water block onto your motherboard. So I'll put a link on the screen to that video. That is the only separate video that I did on this process. And I was planning on doing installation guides for the memory water blocks, but you know, they're just so easy to install and so quick to install. It would have been like a less than 5-minute installation guide, and that goes for the CPU water block as well. You know, with Socket 2011, it is just so incredibly easy to install. Okay, I've just started pulling apart the case so that I can start the mods. But before I pull off the panels, I just wanted to show you some of the components that I've already started installing into the case. So as you can see, I've installed the pumps and also the BitsPower 150mm reservoir. Now I use this reservoir a lot in my builds because I really like the subtle design. It's also made out of incredibly high quality materials. It lasts a long time, it's strong and robust, and it looks great. Now, the way I've mounted the pumps and the reservoir into the case is with EK uni holders. And as you can see, this is the entire pump assembly here. So it's the Bits Power dual pump top, and also on the back the two Swiftech MCP 655s covered by the Bits Power mod kits. So the whole assembly is mounted in there, and I actually mounted the pumps first. And I just need to explain that when I look at a case, you know, I had no idea how I was going to mount the reservoir or the pumps. You know, I had no idea how I was going to mount any of that. I hadn't even really thought about it, because what I do, I do plan it out first enough to be able to like quote it and order the right parts and the right amount of parts, but I don't actually plan the routing of the tubing and, you know, the exact mounting locations of the components until I get it all in front of me. For me, it's not the question of is there a spot to mount it. It's more a question of where am I going to mount it, because there is literally so many possibilities. So this is the spot that I decided on, because I know that, you know, the graphics cards are going to be here. There's going to be a tube coming back from them to the top of the reservoir. Now, this is a rule. The reservoir always should be above the pumps, and it should be reservoir, pumps. That should be, you know, the only rule in your component order. The rest doesn't really matter a whole lot. And, you know, people can argue this all they want, and I can certainly argue them back, but I'm not going to go into that now. So that's why I've done this anyway. Reservoir feeds straight into the pumps, and then it's going to go straight down here to the 560mm radiator, and after that is, you know, it's probably going to go to the radiator next to it. But anyway, that's what I've planned so far, and I know for sure that the client doesn't need any 3.5-inch bays. They're not going to install any hard drives. They're just going to install SSDs, and there's 3 spots for SSDs around the back of the case. So I knew that I could use all of the 5.25-inch bays except for the top one, which is for the optical drive, and I've left that free. Now, there's also a fan controller going into this build, but that only takes up, you know, to about here, like less than half of a 5.25-inch bay. You'll probably notice that some of the case has already come apart because, yeah, I've already started removing screws and things. So anyway, I'll just give you a bit more of a look around and explain exactly what I've done here. I am really happy with this mount. I'm happy with the way I've mounted this because it is really sturdy. What I've done is used 4 EK uni holders, and they're very strong bits of metal. You can see one of them there. You know, they're thick and strong. They're not going to bend, or they're not going anywhere. So there's one down there, and first of all I mounted them onto the pump top, and the pump top actually has M4 threads in it right where that mount is there. So I used an M4 bolt into the pump top, and every bolt, washer, they're all nice and, you know, matched up black. Then I've mounted the EK uni holder here to the case, and I've had to use M3 bolts here with a nut on the other side because the holes in the case are only big enough for an M3. So they're button head Allen key bolts. So I've done exactly the same thing at the top here, but, you know, a mirror image of it. It's facing down towards this one, and this one's facing up. So you've seen the bottom one. I'll just give you a look at the top one. Some people are going to get bored by all of this information, but, you know, I'm thinking about the people that want to know how I've done this so that they can do it themselves. So that's why I'm going into all this detail. So there's another M4 bolt there, which goes straight into the pump, you know, the pump top. I didn't have to modify anything to do this. And that's something that you need to think about, guys. There's so many people, you know, that think modding is cool. You know, the more you mod, the better your system is. But if you can avoid modding and still create something that looks amazing, then then why not? So, I mean, I could have just gone, you know, bugger it and drilled a whole bunch of holes all over the place in the case and made up custom mounts and gone out and painted them all. But look, it would have got me the same result anyway. So that's how the pump top is mounted. Then I mounted the reservoir, and to do this, another EK uni holder here, M3 here. I've got an M4 holding the default bits power mounts that came with the reservoir. So one EK uni holder there and one at the top. Same thing twice there. So there it is. It was a bit hard to line it all up, but trust me, everything is perfectly straight and in line. There's nothing on an angle. I mean, yeah, you can see probably the only thing on an angle there is the actual plastic mount is slightly curved, but everything, you know, is perfect. And I'm just going to show you it from the front. So you can see the dual pumps. That's one of the most powerful pump configurations on the planet. Well, you know, water cooling pump configurations. Can basically handle anything. Now, it's certainly not sitting down onto the bottom of the case. It's about 10 to 15, or it looks like about 10 mil above the bottom of the case, and I made sure of that because, of course, I don't want it, you know, rattling or touching the bottom of the case. So you can see the mounts there and there. So there it is. Okay. Now, I faced the reservoir with the 3 openings upwards because, you know, it's going to come back to here and you can fill it through the top. At the bottom here, I have a dual male fitting, then I have a 15mm extension fitting, and then a 90-degree elbow into the pump top. I just have a stop fitting here. I have another 90-degree fitting out of here and a compression fitting, and I have a bits power temperature sensor plugged in there. You can see the wire going out underneath the pump top there. So that's going to be plugged into the motherboard so that you can actually see the temperature of the water cooling loop within the operating system with software. Okay, now you can see the reservoir there is actually touching the pump top, and that worked out perfectly. I did that deliberately. I mean, I could have just used a longer extension fitting and, you know, pushed it up further, but it's not sitting up against there tightly, it's just touching it. And the reason why I left it like this is to give it a little bit more strength. Like if the reservoir is pushed over or something, it will come up against the pump top and, you know, stop any of that kind of flex from happening. So yeah, that's deliberate to give it some more strength. Some of you might be wondering about vibration. I have never had any problems with vibration with these particular pumps. So I am confident that vibration is not going to be a problem with this configuration. And if on the off chance it does turn out to be a problem, I'll just go back, undo everything and put some rubber washers, you know, underneath the mounts, and that will fix the problem. So anyway, that is the first of the components into the build, and that's it for part 2 of the build log. In part 3, I'm going to be installing the water blocks onto the graphics cards, and part 3 is going to be mostly about the modding of the case. I need to install the radiators into the bottom compartments, and I'm also going to be installing another radiator somewhere in the case, and that is the little surprise that I mentioned. So guys, see if you can guess where I'm going to install the 3rd radiator. Put it in the comments. That sums up this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like and favorite if you want to see more.